Good evening, everybody. This is the special town council meeting, February 9th, 2016. Item 1 on the agenda is the pledge of allegiance and moment of silence. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is public comments. We have a list there.
I do. I have Teresa Gregory as the first speaker.
Good evening, my name is Teresa Gregory. I live at 16 Essex Road, New York, Connecticut. I have two items that I'd like to discuss that are going to be presented this evening. The first one is the turf field. I find it very disheartening that I could be looking at social media today and see Andy Grossman commenting as he was about the turf field. Whether it will be abandoned or not, people have put a lot of work into this, and I think that it deserves a little bit better than what it's getting. The second item on my list tonight is genteel tree service. And Mr. Gombach, it directly concerns you. I find it very, very disheartening. Excuse me?
It concerns all of us, ma'am.
It does concern all of us. However, I was not in the courtroom sitting opposite them in a criminal case. You, in fact, were. And I find that you did not recuse yourself, you did not disclose that you were, and I think your past life should not impact our present town leader. I think that it appears that you have been vehemently against them getting the contract, and I can't help but wonder if this has something to do with it.
Mr. Clark, were you at any of the meetings where this decision was made?
Where what decision was made?
Did you and I have a conversation about this?
No, we didn't.
You had the purchasing authority.
You and I did not have any conversations
I just want to clarify where your information is coming from.
online. It's an article that's published, was easily found in an online search.
Very good. Thank you.
Carl Zimmerman.
I'm on number 9 on the agenda already.
Okay. Neil Marcus. Attorney Marcus.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here on behalf of Gentile Tree Company. I appeared at your last monthly meeting and protested, lodged a protest against the award of the bid to a higher bidder. We cited to you at that time that we thought that it violated your town charter and that it was done for the improper reason. And my request at that time was that the council take it upon themselves to see that the matter was sent back for one of two resolutions. One, to award to the lowest bidder, which would be my client, or two, to at least rebid the bids to see, in fact, if there were any discrepancy in the bidding, it would be corrected and rebid. Not that we think there was, but it's certainly an option to do. My plea to the council at the last meeting engendered a lively discussion, and unfortunately it took place after the public speaking session. And I see that there's a matter on tonight's agenda which will also follow the public speaking session. So I'll be brief in what our position is. The mayor, I think, was correct in suggesting that it's important that you investigate how your contractors all across the board operate under the various contracts. But there was somewhat of a suggestion that somehow the tree contract was not abided by. It was not adhered to by my client. So when that suggestion was made, we went back and did our own research. In fact, did a fairly exhaustive research of the history of the last 5 or 6 years that my client, well actually 5 years since 2011, that my client had been the low bidder and the performer of that contract. And again, we relied on records from the town as well as records from my client. And we determined that, for example, during the period of 2011 through 2015, 480 trees were taken down by my client under the bid. That's the work that was performed under the basic bid. In reality, there were 833 trees removed during that same period, which means that 353 of them were outside of the bid. Now, my client didn't request to take down the extra trees. That was work that he was glad to perform, but it was billed under the same cost, the same costing as the bid, but as additional work. Similarly, during the same period, 2011 to 2015, my client performed 244 hours of emergency work under the bid. The basic cost was paid for under the bid. But the actual amount of hours spent by my client in emergency work for the town during the same period was 691 hours. The discrepancy or the differential there is 447 hours. Essentially, he performed more emergency work, twice as much, almost twice as much, as was covered under the bid. And obviously, these engendered additional charges. Those charges were, in fact, made pursuant to the costing of the work that was originally the basis of the bid. So that information is important. And by the way, I encourage you to review all of your bidders and all of your service contracts to try to determine if, in fact, the town is getting the value for what they contract. But here, starting this year, that's not the case, because you're going to take a bid that's higher. It makes no sense to me when the lower bidder is in fact qualified. He is a local contractor. I know the second lowest bidder is as well, but with respect to awarding the contract, you really have to go back to the requirements of the charter. In reviewing what happened here, we found two other sort of flagrant flaws in the bid process that we should bring to your attention. One is that the second lowest bidder that was awarded the bid never put up a bid bond. Bid bond is required by the terms of the bid request. That's an informality that apparently was overlooked. But then the performance bond was not posted either in a timely manner. I understand that the performance bond has now been posted, but again, outside of the specifications of the bid documents themselves. So I'm going to leave you with a thought. And by the way, there was a suggestion that somehow my client's wife, Mrs. Gentile, was somehow to be considered in this award. She does not take down trees. She doesn't really work for the tree company. And I don't think she should really be a consideration at all, even though I've met her and she seems very pleasant. The fact of the matter is that we should be focusing on the bidding requirements, the bid and the work that has been performed in the past. Which leads me to the suggestion that this council appoint a subcommittee, and if you're going to investigate this, that you do it the proper way, which is not to do it here in public speaking and then follow that by debate where my client and I can't participate. We would offer to meet with members of the council or with the mayor himself, if that's the case may be, to review the entire history of the work that was done and to substantiate why the bid that has been awarded really needs to be set aside. And again, either the bid awarded to the lowest qualified bidder or in the alternative to be rebid. The other option, of course, my client has is to go and take this matter to a court for determination as to whether he has been damaged by the way that the bidding process has been handled. Quite honestly, if we do that, I think a court would remand it back for a new bid. And that's kind of where I'm going to start right now, which is to say that I would ask that we're in this evening because you have a busy agenda. A lot of people sitting here probably have no interest in what I'm saying, hopefully not sitting in front of me, but sitting behind me. But I would ask that you do that, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but as I said, I'd like to do it in the proper forum. Any consideration that you give will be greatly appreciated, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joseph Faley?
Joseph Pala, 17 Cobble Lane, New Milford. I'm here to speak on the artificial turf project construction committee. This entire process began almost 2 years ago with the feasibility committee to see if it was feasible for this project. It was exactly 1 year ago that they presented their findings to the community, to the council, and the mayor. Subsequently, a artificial turf construction committee was formed. I'm going to mention a few names here. Lou Alhage, Chris DeCaro, Robert Gregory, Russell Posthauser, Melvin McSpearty, Doug Skelly, and Kevin Fitness. All those individuals are on that committee, and they're all individuals from the public that came forward on recommendations of either the former mayor or the council people sitting at that time, with no political agenda. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or anything else. But what we know is they're the public that were willing to come forward for something that they thought was important for this community. And for the first 4 or so months that committee was, almost 5 months, those individuals, along with those of us who are known more to the public, like Councilman Wargo, Councilman Bass, myself, is fallen back, Mr. Stanton. But more importantly was the community's involvement. And we met weekly, every Wednesday, for almost 4 months as a committee. And what's the purpose of those committees? We've used them for the high school. We've used them for the ambulance barn, Landemic Park, currently going to the library. Those committees allow the public participation in government. And that's what's going on here, public participation in the turf fields. So we get input from people, many of them who work in construction, people who have interest in this community and something as important as this artificial turf project. It was given tremendous consideration, discussion. Every person on that committee believes this is such an important thing. They took their job and continue to take their job on that committee so seriously about what's good for the town, what's good for our schools, what's good for the students. And not only athletes, but band members and cheerleaders and people who run track, all people who might use those new facilities. And they studied the construction of them. They studied the different types of turf. And the issue that seems to be somewhat on the height of everybody's mind is the infill, the material that gets set into it. And there was different opinions across the board, and every one of those individuals have taken their job so serious and studied and researched it. And the current artificial turf construction committee, because of the input from the community, is ahead of schedule. And it's anticipated, fully anticipated, would be under budget and ahead of schedule if that committee continues to move forward on what we had recommended to the council in the past and we had brought to the Board of Education. Also in that committee, the mayor, we consider the mayor a part of that committee. The mayor himself and some of his administration have been at every one of our meetings since they've been in office. And Mr. Chairman was there the other night with us, and we even asked for his participation. He just wanted to be an observer, and we've asked for the mayor's participation. We have nothing to hide. What we want is the input. We want the input from the schools, from community because we are so proud of what we accomplished after 2 years of work. And look where we are right now. It's obvious that the project is well underfoot, and they're ahead of schedule. A lot of it's because of the weather, but there's a little bit of a slowdown now. The community wants these. The schools are behind them as far as the parents and the students. There's so many of what we see here tonight. Whether they be from bands or track or the sports teams. It is an enhancement of the town of New Milford. It's an enhancement of one of the town's most incredible assets is high school, which everybody is so proud of and everybody knows about it. We drive up and down Route 7. We're just going to take it and make it a little bit more beautiful. And we believe in what we put forward to this town, to this council, and the mayor, as to what's safe and what's efficient and what's there to help save money for the community down the line. And more importantly, if you were to hear and speak, as you've heard from so many of our students who are involved, whether it was the band and our team captains, the pride, some of them who are supporting this would never play on it because they won't be here next year when it's finished.
Mr. Barlett, you're exceeding your 5 minutes. Do you want to wrap it up?
And I'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Mayor. But I am here to support what we have done on our official turf construction committee and what we've put forward in our recommendations, and I ask that we continue to move at the pace we have to bring this in on time and under budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Warren Handel.
What was the name of it? What was his name? What was his name?
Oh, Warren Handel.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, committee, Walter. Yeah, I'm a little on the short side, so I'll make sure you can see me.
Give your name and address.
Warren Hengel, 37 Glenridge Court, New Milford, Connecticut. I'm here tonight for the first time in 17 years that I've lived in New Milford. Some of the things that I hear in social media, Facebook, Spectrum, so on and so forth, that seems like it really ruffled some feathers since we've been voted into our town as mayor. I just want to clarify some of this because, being in the military, being a Marine, last thing I hate to see and do and act on is scuttlebutt, which is rumor. Because rumor and scuttlebutt is the worst thing that could deteriorize the morale and ethics of any town and committee. With that said, my questions are of this, because I've never done this before. My understanding is that when you have contracts that you need to be filled, they go out to bid. Those bids come in, you pick the ones that are most qualified and most reasonable in price. Now, I've done some construction on my homes, and I usually send out 3 bids. You get the low, medium, and high. I never go with the low, I never go with the high, I go with the middle. Now, my understanding is that Mr. Gentile, I don't even know if he's here tonight, to see him, don't really know much about him. But my understanding is that he's had the contract for 5 years, and he's done a phenomenal job with that. Again, from the circles that I associate with, he's got more equipment with 4 or 5 bucket loaders, cherry pickers, whereas Mr. Emmons has 1. Whether it's new, old, really doesn't matter. My understanding, Mr. Gentile's bid came in substantially lower than Mr. Emmons. And this committee and you, man, you have a fiduciary responsibility to us. Now, I've lived here for 17 years and donated $50,000 to $60,000 in form of taxes to this town. And I feel that there are other influences that are making you change your mind here. One, for instance, that I understand that you represented a client that used to work for Mr. Gentile. And Mr. Gentile testified against that client. And that may have influenced and swayed your decision to go with the higher bidder, who has no history with our town at all, who is more money than Mr. Gentile, less equipment, less manpower. I just want to know where you came up with your decision. Basically, that's it. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Warren. Russ, post-Hapner. Well, okay, gonna have
Road North in Milford. I'm on the turf committee, and I'm also a professional engineer. As an engineer, I'm used to evaluating situations. When we started on the turf committee, I was weary of the crumb rubber infill, based on the negative reports that were out there. We did our research, and the negative reports that I saw were based on older material. We saw a lot of reports that indicates the safety of the chrome rubber. The big thing lacking was no reports on the alternate materials. So we had to make a decision based on what we had. No reports on the alternate materials, positive reports on the chrome rubber. That's how I made my decision. There's also the organic materials that have to be kept wet to be used. And I see a possibility, I'm not an expert on this, of mold and fungus and other bacteria that's going to grow on, that could grow. We use the word could grow on organics and could be inhaled and can't be good if it gets in the lungs. Chrome rubber apparently doesn't support these things. Once again, not an expert. Show the background how I came to my decision. The other night we had a presentation, and I've got to apologize. I left the lady's card on the kitchen counter. Her name was Miss Taylor, was from an environmental group, and I just can't remember the name of the initials. And I was very interested to hear what she had to say. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a very biased report. I'll say this for a couple of reasons. She initially came in and said, doctors at Yale did some study. There was no backup to any of that statement, and apparently the study was that this is her presentation to me. The backup was not really strong. They were looking to get a grant. She made a presentation. We asked questions, and we asked questions, did she know any studies of the other materials and all that? Then she got into a few things that I didn't quite like, in all due respect, mate, because I know you're an attorney. She said, basically, that class action attorneys are circling the wagon, ready to attack. And I don't remember the exact words, but that came across several times, and a couple of other members questioned that. And I didn't think that was a good way to present your point. The other thing she talked about was a study with soccer players and coming down with cancer. No documentation of how this came about. And it bothers me because I lived in Long Island with 20 houses on the block. 25% of the fathers came down with cancer. But they moved out of the area. So we never knew whether, was it the environment or was it just something that happened as they moved out. I kind of relate to that statement she made. But once again, there's no backup. And I would love to get backup on this because I'm not an expert on the info. And finally, she said, it was the most disturbing thing I could hear a person like her say. She talked about studies that are starting and getting ready to start. They're going to be 3 to 5 years. And she made a positive statement. These studies will show that chrome rubber is no good. Now, how can you make a statement like that and present an unbiased position? So I really wanted to learn more. I think we got a very biased study. The other thing I will say is, if it turns out chrome rubber is no good, and I don't know today, we have a lot of positive reports and no reports on any other material. It's going to come out in 5 or 7 years. We can replace the material. It may be a cost, but it's not a material that we're stuck with. So just keep in mind, if you hear reports from this lady, Ms. Taylor, I really apologize not remembering the organization's name. She gave us a very biased opinion, an opinion I, because of that, cannot trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Jason Ezra.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Town Council. My name is Jason Ezra, 330 Aspentuck Ridge Road. I know I've spoken in front of most of you at just about every turf meeting. Just wanted to say a couple quick things. I am in charge of New Milford's Youth Lacrosse, also New Milford's Pop Warner Football. We have approximately 450 families that are beyond excited to get these turf fields at the high school. I have a sophomore sitting back here with me that I can't even talk out how excited he is to play the fields. We go to New Fairfield, Ridgefield, all these schools around us that have Brookfield, have beautiful turf fields. When they come to play us, all we hear sitting in the stands as a fan is, oh my God, I can't believe how bad these fields are. All the work that the committee did to get this thing rolling, the project is moving along great thanks to the weather. And when I woke up this morning and saw all the stuff on social media that it was a potential stoppage, it blows my mind. I happen to be a local contractor, and once I have a signed contract, you know, unless I really do something bad, the project's going through. And so I urge you guys to, you know, stick with your contract and get this project moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Peter Bass?
Those are all me.
Okay. That's the end of the list, Mr. Mayor, unless there's somebody else from the audience.
Sorry about that, there was a little line back there, I couldn't get in to sign my name. My name is Douglas Skelly, I live at 4 Birchwood Lane. I'm also part of the Turf Committee, I'm also on Park and Rec. I'm also the president of Cedar Hills Homeowners Association. I'm also going to echo a lot of things that Joe Finella said, and a lot of the board members and the people on the commission. A lot of you know me, I've been here countless of times and talked about the fields. I've done research over the last couple of years. I have a couple other things I'd like to add tonight. One is, if you're familiar with Brookfield, they have the Cadigan Fields, they have the two ones that are just built. Dennis DePinto, who's the Park and Rec head over there, was in charge of the whole project. I've been speaking with him over the last couple of years via email, spoke to him about almost an hour 2 days ago. And I asked him, you know, with the contract, you know, did you have any resistance? How did you guys feel comfortable with it? And he said, you know, we had talked, and he goes, no. He said, you know, we go by the state guidelines. We felt comfortable with the chrome rubber. We know that other towns have them. There's over 100 turf fields within a 30-mile radius. 8 out of 10 SWC fields have them. All CIAC ADs were emailed, sent a video last week, reaffirming the safety and the health of the turf fields in Kansas. That's directly from Pete Lipinski, the athletic director. Having said that, all Connecticut schools, and every Connecticut state college has turf fields. There's 11,000 of them in the United States. There'll be 18,000 by the year 2020. There are studies that you can sit on a computer for hours and read. The state of Connecticut has done them. They've done them in 2010. They reaffirmed them in an article in the Connecticut Post, November of 2015. The head toxologist, Gary Ginsberg, reconfirmed 5 different agencies in the state of Connecticut have gone through this. This has been the most scrutinized item for the last 10 years of anything besides cell phones. It's been crazy. And you'll get opinions from everywhere. We go by science, we go by data. We don't go by fear. All right? Anybody can write anything on Facebook and just make it true. Right? When we sat down as a committee, we took it serious. We did our research. We did dozens of meetings, dozens. We had public participation. We asked people to come. BSC did presentations. We invited everybody to come. Nobody showed up. We wanted the public to come. And now we're sitting here 2 years later still discussing this. In the 11th hour of this project, it's halfway through. It's nonsense. There are communities all over Connecticut that have these. So with saying that, it's frustrating that we have to sit here today and go through this again. And we have to call all of these people that supported us in the last couple of years and make phone calls and have these people take time out of their day to come here and go over the same thing every time. I don't know what more you need from a committee, and then you don't want to even use the facts. You go on your own and decide that what we're doing is useless. And you go on your own and make your own agenda. So what is the subcommittee for? Why are we doing this for 2 years? Why do you have it? This council unanimously did it. Bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans all got together. We have one sitting on our commission. Everyone here voted. I don't understand why are we going through this again. There has to be some other agenda besides this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Howard Senior, 161 Mariel Road, New Milford. I I want to echo a little bit of what's already been said. I'm a parent, I've coached at the youth level, I coach at the high school. I was not on the building committee, I was at the presentations that this subcommittee presented at in the schools. We had a large turnout. All these questions and concerns that the public had, I believe, were addressed. I find the fact that we have to have this meeting and discuss this, I think it's an insult to the process. It's an insult to the people who drove the process, and it's an insult to the community that showed up at these meetings at the schools to get this done. Ground has been broken, we're on track, and here we are potentially putting the brakes on something that, as Doug said, for the life of me, I can't figure it out. And I really hope that at tonight's meeting, somebody explains to the rest of us why we have to do this again. And I want to publicly thank the subcommittee for the turf for all their hard work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else before I call Peter Bass? Please.
Pete Bass, Mount Tom Road, in Milford, Connecticut. Speaking as the chairman of the subcommittee, the TURF. First, I'd like to thank Councilman Chairman for attending our meeting. Thank you for coming. Real big concern I have is I've been involved in community life, whether it be Pop Warner, Downtown Business Alliance, whatever, for over 30 years. The most wonderful thing about our town has been our volunteerism. Has been the community comes together, everybody works together for the betterment of the town. And what I'm beginning to see is that beginning to erode, which is a very dangerous thing. This building committee that we're talking about was comprised, as most of the people who are on this council and voted for it, has over 100 years building experience. 100 years on it. Another thing, Mayor is a member of our committee. We had our meeting Wednesday night. Our first meeting we had together, the mayor and I, at the very end, kind of graciously said hi to each other. And the mayor said, we got to get together and talk about things. Love to do it, Mayor. Be a great thing. Let's move the town forward. After our meeting Wednesday night, actually I should say before that, the mayor had sent an email to me for 3 questions that the town council that we talked about before that we need to bring forward to the town. We had a special meeting last Wednesday night to address those concerns. We were then going to be presenting it to the council tonight. The mayor then had a meeting Friday with Luke from BSG and town employee Dan Stanton. I was not invited. As a matter of fact, an email was sent out saying for me not to come. Section yes. Oh, sorry. My concerns are that we need to be working together for a project like this. Why we can't talk about it is questionable to me. Another thing, since we're talking about social media and social components on things, we're having people that are politically affiliated using a lot of bigotry on there. Talking about the fact that if you're a Republican, that you somehow have some egregious thing going on, that you can't help your town, that you can't do this, you can't do that because you have some kind of agenda. So Mayor, I'm hoping tonight you can publicly denounce that Another thing, that committee, these people are hardworking people. They're giving their time and their talents, and I applaud them for that. I mean, a $4 million project. These people are willing to give their time. I'm hoping you can continue to help us get this moving, get this going, doing it like we said that we would do, and moving the town forward. There's plenty of information there that we would love to give you the reasons why we chose the way that we chose, and we'd love to have a dialogue. And I'll address the rest of it more at council, but I hope, Mayor, that the social media, where we're taking innuendos, and because people are of a certain party and affiliation, that we're degrading them, and the work that the committee did, I hope that you'll publicly denounce that, because that's just not the way this town is.
I hope that applies to me too. I
Of course
get
it
beat
does.
up on there a lot.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course it does.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? All right, moving on. Yeah.
So, before we get into the regular agenda, I'd like to make a motion to move the mayor's comments up to number 3. And get a second.
Can I make an amendment to that? Could I make, after mayor's comments, can we move number 12 up to, after that, so we can give people in town don't have to spend the rest of the night listening to the rest of our meeting?
Okay.
Thank you.
So following, all in favor, sir?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so we're gonna move the agenda item, mayor's comments, which was number 5 up to number 3, and then number 12, the turf construction committee update, will be updated, we move it up to number 5. So. I would agree on the vitriol that's kind of expressed on Facebook and question anybody who gets their information on social media. I've got an email address, mayor@newmilford.org. Phone number is very easy to find. A lot of what's been expressed tonight, I have absolutely no idea where it came from. And it's like one of those games of telephone that my children play in 2nd grade, where you start out saying one thing, and by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th person, it's so completely distorted that you wouldn't even recognize it. But yet there are people that take advantage of this kind of thing, and they do post that kind of stuff on Facebook. So it doesn't do the community any good, and I would just urge everybody to contact me if they do have a question, and probably a lot of what we're doing here tonight and all the people that show up here is avoided. Now to my comments on the turf fields. I'm surprised by the outrage exhibited by some very simple questions that I want to ask. No entity, no subcommittee, no government should be afraid of questions that seek to protect our town and our children. And despite the misinformation and righteous indignation, it's not only my right to ask such questions, but my duty to do so. And while I appreciate the work the members of the Turf Field Subcommittee has put into this project, their role as an appointed, not elected group, as set forth in the Town Council resolution creating them, in no way is to recommend and report. While I have and will continue to consider the recommendations, in no way am I obligated to endorse them. And I will hold them to the same level of scrutiny that all members of this government are held to. In the 8 weeks that I've been in office, I haven't received any recommendations or reports from the committee. Invoices were submitted without approval from my office. Dirt was dumped at JPS without any consult with me. I found out about the water main break the same way members of the public did. So the lack of communication has raised a substantial red flag in my mind. Now, I met with Luke McCoy yesterday, the BSC general contractor, to ask a very simple question. Now, why did this company design the fields and track a multi-million-dollar product on top of a water main? Now, his answer was simple. The committee and the former mayor directed him to exclude any work involving the water main from the project. Now, consequently, the committee is preparing to endorse a proposal to sign an addendum to the contract to pay BSC for the work to design and manage the water main relocation. And I reminded him that any contract would be signed by me, so I should be included in the discussion, even if the committee doesn't include me. So I was surprised when he mentioned that the second field was also being built on top of another pipe, this time a sewer main. And again, the committee made a decision, not a recommendation. And in light of recent events, my questions, I believe, are justified. Now, the second part of our discussion was regarding the use of crumb rubber in the fields. That's true. Now, for those of you that don't know, crumb rubber is basically the tires that cars and trucks drive on the road. After they're used up as tires, they're pulverized into these rubber crumbs that form the base of the fields. So these tires, they're not made for extensive human interaction. They have chemicals added to them to make them durable on the road, and they pick up oil and other contaminants such as lead as they drive on the road. And then they're recycled into this material that we're going to have our children playing on. Now, BSC actually noted that a number of fields had to be ripped up because of lead contamination from the same type of crumb rubber. Now, contrary to what people have claimed, I'm not opposing or seeking to reverse the installation of the artificial fields. But I do have a very serious concern about this material that is about to be dumped on our town property. And because in this day and age, where you need to use your common sense, where you need to be informed about the poison we encounter in our daily lives, to ignore these concerns borders on recklessness. Yet, I'm not alone in my concern. Senators Blumenthal and Nelson have sent a letter to the U.S. Consumer Product and Safety Commission dated November 4th, 2015, expressing their concern and asking for an independent investigation to address the risks and health issues raised by this product. Now, the concerns were repeated in a letter to the President, urging a coordinated and comprehensive investigation of these health claims. Multiple municipalities and school districts have abandoned crumb rubber in favor of organics. Brunswick School in Greenwich. Montgomery County, Maryland bans publicly funded crumb rubber fields. Pleasantville, Irvington, and Bronxville installed fields with organic infill. Riverdale School in the Bronx installed a cork coconut fiber fill. California has instituted bans. And there are more across the state and the country. And if you don't ask yourself what these schools and municipalities see that New Milford does not, then you're not asking the right questions. A Yale University study published in June noted 96 chemicals in the crumb rubber used in artificial fields. Of the 96, nothing, let me repeat, nothing is known about the potential health effects of over half of the chemicals. And of the other half that had assessments, 20% were listed as probable carcinogens. That doesn't raise a red flag for anybody? I'm a parent. This is my daughter and my sons that you're sending out onto these fields. Now, Yale's lead investigator stated, it seems irresponsible to market a hazardous waste as a consumer product. The Mount Sinai Icon School of Medicine wrote a letter to the Hamden Planning and Zoning Board dated February 9th, 2016, today, detailing the risks and concerns associated with the use of crumb rubber. They recommend, and I quote, erring on the side of caution by opting not to install an additional crumb rubber turf field. In the absence of convincing evidence of safety, we recommend that children not play on surfaces that contain known carcinogens and neurotoxins. At one point, the cigarette lobby had people convinced that cigarettes did not cause lung cancer. At one point, asbestos was an amazing material for use in schools. At one point, PCBs were approved for use in buildings, such as schools. And if you look at our schools today, you'll find these materials. Lead was added to paint and gasoline. And today, this very minute, the town of New Milford is spending millions of dollars to remediate asbestos and PCBs that were once acceptable building materials. If you see these trends as I do, and you acknowledge the common sense and scientific concerns raised by this product, how can anybody fault me for questioning its use? I have asked BSC to provide me with alternatives to crumb rubber, including procuring a guarantee of its safety. If we're told that it's safe, if you're telling me it's safe for my children, sign on the dotted line. Provide a guarantee. I'm a parent of young children and an elected official. I intend to continue this questioning, and if a change order is requested, I will introduce it to the community and the town council for debate and authorization. If a decision is made to require a parent to subject their child to these potential health risks by playing on crumb rubber, then that decision should be made by our elected representatives. And just in reference to one of the studies that one of the public commenters had indicated, the state of Connecticut study, I believe the one I was referring to, dated December 2015, DPH, fact sheet significantly states the 2010 risk assessment of 5 artificial turf fields in Connecticut does not provide conclusive evidence about the safety of artificial turf fields. There is still uncertainty and additional investigation is warranted. Like all scientific studies, our evaluation of artificial turf fields has limitations. Skipping to the end, in the meantime, DPH does not endorse or recommend the installation of a certain type of field. So for anybody to hold any study up as an endorsement of turf rubber, as an endorsement of its safety, is frankly ignoring the caveats in every one of these studies that they are limited and that more information and studies are necessary. And what I'm saying is, while these studies are being called for, while these studies are being recommended, let's at least consider an alternative rather than have ourselves burned in 3, 5, 7 years after exposing our children and our land to a potential toxic environment.
Can I just ask a question about the yield study?
It's really not question and comment.
Well, do you have a copy of it? I mean, you're referring to a study and I'd like a copy.
Sure. I could provide a copy for you.
Could provide a copy for all of us,
Absolutely.
an email, please.
Yes.
Do you know how the toxins were analyzed?
As parliamentarian, I'm going to call a point of order at this point.
All right. Point of order, recognized. Thank you.
Just trying to have an open discussion, I apologize.
Moving on to number 4 on the agenda. I'm sorry, 5.
I'm sorry, I think Mr. Esposito had something to say.
It's interesting how you're cutting off a councilman when he is trying to pursue a line of questioning with a point of order. I mean, I appreciate you stepping up as parliamentarian, but Councilman Szymanski was just asking a question. I think you should be afforded the time to have an answer and finish. And
I appreciate that, but here's the thing. Public comment, I really try not to interrupt because it's public comment as much as I want to say something. Mayor's comments, chance for me to say my comments without engaging in discussion. We have this item on the agenda, so everybody's going to have a chance to ask their questions. It's the same reason why I didn't question Councilman Bass while he's up there. I certainly have questions and comments, but we're not abiding by the rules and the agenda if we just kind of lose people. So let's get it to the point where we're doing the update.
And
then
any item,
we can have a discussion.
unfortunately, any item on this agenda, the town council, which is the board of directors of this town, have a right to ask questions during any comment. You make a
I
comment,
disagree.
this has been a common
You can't question
practice since,
somebody during public comments.
because public comment has not been made, you're not afforded to have a discussion. It's there, the public making a comment. We are at basically the board of directors meeting here at the town.
You're getting a chance to comment. We're going to get to the next agenda item.
Well, Mike, I have a question for you then. I have one question.
Let's
for you.
move on. I've concluded the mayor's comments.
Okay.
So what are we up to, number 4?
Yeah, I'll say my comment.
We're moving
The artificial turf update committee, please.
Item number 12, moved up, yeah.
You approve our past minutes, just so we don't forget. So we kind of skipped over number 3.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the prior minutes. with
Point of
the
order,
following
we amended the agenda, so we would have to amend it again.
We amended
Right, you have to
take
amend
that out. You did? You did that?
amendment. I did
Yes.
make a motion.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay, so, number 12 is the Artificial Turf Construction Committee update on the synthetic turf project activity. So, is there anybody here to provide updates, first of all?
Luke McCoy with BSC Group, Glastonbury, Connecticut. I apologize for our meeting yesterday. This item was supposed to be tabled for tonight's meeting. So, I'm a little discombobulated. I apologize. But I do have for all of you, as requested by the committee, a summary of all of the meetings we've had over the last 4 months on the infill and the different items. So I will pass that out to everyone here. I've also done it in an effort to save a little bit of paper, because I have one full set which has a number of the full studies within it, but rather than make 150 copies for everyone, I have this for the record and it can be passed around. So briefly, an update on the project overall. We've had a very positive winter weather to move forward, so the contractor's been very fortunate to continue moving forward with excavation of the soil, the existing field, demolition of the existing track surface, removal of the old lights. He is now at subgrade, and the collector main drain around both fields is just about complete. His next step will be putting in the concrete anchor curb on both, and then building in the new drainage system for the field. Once both of those are in, his intent is to remove the existing asphalt. Hopefully by then the asphalt plants will be open, the new track base can be paved, and then we'll progress with the installation of the lighting, the turf, and then finally the track. The goal is the project to stay on schedule for completion by middle of June, weather depending. We're hoping that the rest of this month in March is mild, and that we don't have delays into the end of March, April because of snow. But we'll have to wait and see on those. He does plan to continue to slowly progress as much as he can throughout the next month, even with the snow on the ground. Bringing snow as he needs to in small areas where he can. If snow continues like it looks like it may, he may shut down and demobilize for a time being, because it's not cost effective to happen. We did meet as a committee last week, as asked, a special meeting to discuss the comments that were addressed as were brought up, one being the utilities under the field. First point of clarification is that the water main did not break. It was actually the valve on the water main that goes to the school. So it's an artillery line that's off of the main. There's a valve that was buried about 6 feet down below. Actually, it wasn't known where it was. It was never, unfortunately, during the high school project, there weren't very good as-builts of what actually went in there. The valve broke. Aquarium came out to fix it. They actually found that their water line at the edge of the property broke when they went to use it as well. From an engineering standpoint, we feel most likely just due to the lack of exercising those valves. When you don't use them, they can corrode, they break, it happens.
Luke, can you tell the council how deep buried is the water main?
6 to 8 feet approximate, again, without fully excavating the whole thing. We're making some assumptions, but that's what it was found. Throughout the process, and I know unfortunately you weren't involved in a lot of the time, we did have committee meetings. The former mayor was involved in those, where we discussed what was on site, the as-built drawings throughout each of the stages were left with the committee for the record, so that those committee members could review the progress drawings, review the survey, all of that prior to meetings, and then consensus for the final construction drawings. So all of that has been in it, has been discussed, and as I said, the former mayor was part of those. well as the infill material that you have. Again, I passed that along. I will note that the referenced Yale study, I just want to make sure everyone is aware, that was not a study done by Yale. It was actually a study hired by an environmental group out of New Haven, EHHI, who hired 2 of the Yale employees to conduct that test. It was a test using a paint stripper to extract the parts out of the chrome rubber. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear on what.
Are you refuting the Yale study then? Are you calling it into question?
Actually, as an engineer, I am. I do not think that it is an actual real-life basis for conducting a study on chrome rubber. As I presented in the documents, there are a number of studies that go through the process that actually mimics what we refer to as the real-world breakdown of chrome rubber, where it's put through a process of vibratory breakdown. It's also heated and cooled. It's exposed to UV machines, which act as a UV degradation. One of the most extensive was done through New Zealand. They then tested it to their equivalent of our OSHA standards. Their standards.
Before you get into it, you're a scientist or an engineer?
No, I'm just repeating what was in the study.
So let me ask you, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen,
Are you done
this is a discussion. Public comment is over.
Are you done presenting?
So my question is though, these are studies conducted by scientists, and you're an engineer, right?
Correct.
So, you're not bringing a scientist in here to refute the study, right?
Mayor,
Yes.
there's a study I'd like to present for the minutes.
Sure.
It's done by Lord C. Green, PhD, DABT, and does refute the HHI study.
Sure.
And if you like, we can read this, or we can put it
You can
in.
just enter it into the minutes.
Into the minutes.
I think the point that,
Basically- I'm sorry. Basically, she refutes the HHI study, talks about clusters within the cancer. She also refutes the study that was done in Washington. It wasn't a study, by the way, it was just random names being popped up. And that's something that we did talk about in our subcommittee. Also, with the study that HHI did, and she confirmed it, was they did use a highest caliber paint thinner onto chrome rubber to get the chrome rubber to actually expel things. So that's a very toxic thinner that you put in there. I mean, if you get it at Home Depot, it basically tells you how bad it is for you. So those type of things, when we were looking at all sorts of options, and going to number 3 where we talked about the costs of organic rubber and the difference why we chose it. As a subcommittee, we went over all of the data that we were presented with, one of them being the New Zealand study and the European study, because they've had much more time, because those fields have been in Europe longer than they have in the United States. Their standards are stricter, and all of them said that it was safe for chrome rubber. Now, going to the organic fill that you asked about, we looked at that in great depth. To me, going into the process, I didn't know chrome rubber from coconut. To me, whatever it was for the best. Some of the things that we saw that were problems for the alternate fills were a couple of things. One, we live in the Northeast. So with the Northeast, we have a different type of weather climate. With that being said, the different infills, without it being chrome rubber, tend to clump. When they clump, that can be a safety issue. Also, some of these infills also can release gases. Also, some of these have pesticides. Also, some of these have an additional maintenance cost. When you're looking at these, they're $20,000 to $40,000 a year in maintenance costs. The town itself couldn't even come up with the money for years to maintain the grass fields. So when we look at all of these particular things, I know Luke can be much more mayor specific than I can be. When we look at all of our goals, and the main one being health, because Mayor, just like you, I've got 3 girls. 2 of them are going to be playing up there. So I too am very concerned. But when we get the data that shows that chrome rubber is safe, and that all the other schools, have the chrome rubber, are we then going to tell children, right, that are up at the high school, if we're saying that this is a problem and this is a health hazard, are we then telling them, you can't play at Danbury, you can't play at Newtown, you can't play at Brookfield, you can't play at Pomperaugh? Oh, by the way, when you want to go play a game at WestCon, you can't go play over there? If that's the road that we're going down to, we're then going to say next up, kids, you can't use your cell phones because there's a thought process somewhere that can cause a problem. I think we should be judicious, but I also think there's an opportunity to get the fields in, have the kids use them, which is what we've all wanted. If it becomes an issue later on down the road, if we need to put in additional infill, we do. Because the costs of these additional infills, Luke, can you tell?
Depending on which one, which they're, I believe, summarized in the last few pages where we summarize the discussion, they range from an additional $150,000 per field to $250,000. So in your case, 2 fields, you have approximately 190,000 square feet of turf that goes down on 2 fields. You're ranging from $1.50 upwards of $3.50, depending on which way. Which of the infills. That would include also design change to work with some of these. Some of the infills do require some sort of an irrigation system, whether it's a permanent or a mobile irrigation system. Those numbers also do not include maintenance costs. That would be separate, which would be quantified under a life cycle.
Just,
Can I just ask, I know it's a hypothetical question, if in 5 years we determine that there is an issue, if we go from rubber in 5 years there is an issue, I think someone mentioned in the public comment, then we can switch it later. You're talking about the increased cost of putting in the organic now. What would be the cost of in 5 years taking everything out and then putting in the organic later?
It's tough to answer based on escalation and what's going on, but generally speaking, you're going to extract the fill out, which is typically done on a lot of replacement fields now, as we're seeing with the recycle, reuse, the farmers being reused, so they extract it in the same way your turf would stay down, and then depending on the system that's put in, the infill could be put right back down. So you're only paying for the infill costs and the extraction. Extraction's probably $20,000 to $30,000 range, ballpark, per field, and then it would be the price of whatever the infill is, which again is going to range. Depending on some of those infills, cost-effective wise, it is better to go to a pad below and do a shorter pile height. But at that time, obviously, you already own your turf, so you'd be having the taller or more infill within it. So
I have a question. Is your company ever involved in any of these fields that have to be ripped up for the lead contamination?
no, and that was with the fibers in the fields. A lot of that came from overseas products that were found, and then they were removed and replaced.
How long ago was that, you know?
It hasn't been an issue since I know, since I think 2007 or 2008, when there's an ASTM test that the industry brought into that all fields are tested.
But before that, these things were installed, and it turned out that they had lead contamination, right?
Some of them did.
Mary Jane?
The Crum Rubber Fields, I think from last time when we talked about them, they're good for what, 10 years? Is it approximately 10 years?
We're looking at a minimum 10 to 15. Technology keeps advancing, so we're seeing fields now that are 10, 11, 12 years old that are now being replaced. The UV technology and the fiber strength is greatly improved, so we're seeing some that are that are lasting longer than that as well. So.
And Mary Jane, also to piggyback on Luke's, when we were looking at the different materials, one of the other things we did look at was the life cycle of alternate fills. And if I'm not mistaken, Luke, it was 6 to 7 years. Am I correct? For the alternative fills?
It depends on which ones. If you're categorizing the organic, those need to be top dressed every 2 years. An average, it will depend on the use and the exact type of it. Some of the other ones where you have the TPE or virgin materials, they tend to have a similar lifespan to the chrome rubber.
Scott?
So, I'm not done yet. So in 10 to 15 years, approximately what will it cost us to have to replace the fields?
Ballpark escalation installation and what we recommend about $500,000 per field.
So, and just kind of, talking about Jessica's question, with the chrome rubber, it's like in 5 years, we find out that, the chrome rubber is hazardous and the studies are coming out more and more. And, you know, what do we say to the community? Like, are we gonna take it up in 5 years? And then, you know, when we had a field that was technically supposedly good for 10 to 15 years, now in 5 years, we may have to replace it. I think that's a very big concern. And I also have a lot of concerns about the water main that's running underneath the field. And what are we going to do about that? Are we going to, you know, move that water main? Are we going to go ahead and do that? Has that been decided by the committee yet?
So the first one is, I can't answer on speculation. All I can look at is the current research and data that's out there. The request by Senator Blumenthal and the others asking for the CPC to do testing. Those same tests that they're asking for have been done a number of times independently. And so that's the research that we look at. The CPC has said that at this time it's a local enforcement decision, which is why many, such as our own health departments, issue statements on it, as well as local health departments within each region, as well as other states. To the second question, the committee has tasked us to put together a proposal for looking at and meeting with Aquarium to discuss the water main. Obviously, it's owned by them, so the discussion is to engage them, talk about what their thought process is, and if they're willing to look at moving it. They have to buy into that first because it is theirs. Until they're satisfied that it's a real possibility, they're quite honestly busy and don't want to talk about speculation. So that just happened last Wednesday, so we are looking at putting a proposal together, sit down, talk to them, develop a scheme in which where that would run, trying to avoid as minimal conflicts as we can on there, and then develop a cost estimate for what that anticipated construction cost may be.
And what about the sewer line?
We have not been asked to look at
I
removing
don't think
it.
that's, Pete, have you addressed that at all?
We have not addressed that.
Are you planning on addressing that?
We can address that, but we were looking at, and speaking with members that have had extensive building experience. These things are 8, 9 feet under the ground. You haven't had any incident at all. What had happened was, unfortunately, you had an arterial break because the asphalts weren't correct. When we saw that, better to be safe than sorry, so we're gonna make the move on the water main.
I would like to get some information.
Sure.
Yeah, about the stuff.
Certainly.
Because it's a concern. I mean, who wants to see these fields being built, and we all know stuff happens, even if it's 6 to 8 feet down.
Sure.
Things can still go wrong.
Mr. Chamberlain?
At the meeting Wednesday night, there was a time window given for a decision on the infill material being used. In other words, when that decision would have to be made and not have it impact the time schedule of the project. Was it not? Could you share that time frame with us if you have an approximate time frame?
Sure. As of right now, we have the submittal on the turf as designed, but we've held off reviewing and approving or rejecting that at this time, knowing that the infill is still an open-ended. Once we approve it, they're authorized to move into manufacturing. So once that happens, there's no turning back. We've held on to that. Once we approve it, you have 3 to 4 weeks of manufacturing and testing, then you have shipping from there. Once it arrives, then it's 3 to 4 weeks of installation, weather dependent. So based on where we stand now, we're inching up to the line where if we do not approve it and allow them or release them into manufacturing and testing, we will be holding up the general contractor. What we may have to look at doing is flopping and having the turf or the track surfacing done before the turf, but there still is going to be a delay based on that.
Two follow-up questions on that. Have this week's less than optimal weather and the issue of the relocation of the water main impacted deadlines for the work yet?
As of right now, no. In fact, the weather's actually helped them. We were kind of anticipating by the end of December, beginning of January, to go into a winter shutdown, and they've been able to proceed. The water line would be done, or could be done, completely independent. The process for moving a water line is that new taps or extensions on the ends where we're meeting the existing pipe are put in. The new pipe would be put in, hooked up. The old pipe would actually be filled with what we call flowable fill. It's a concrete flowable product, and it's abandoned in price. You would not want to excavate out the old pipe that's there. You would actually cause more damage in the future than leaving it there.
And finally, as far as the manufacturing that you mentioned, is there any discernible difference in manufacturing timelines for manufacturing of crumb fill versus organic fill?
It possibly can be. That becomes a process of availability and sourcing of that. I can't answer that for the vendor who's under contract for that until we decide that way, but I can certainly reach out and ask what he's seeing in the industry right now for availability if the switch were to make how readily can he access that for this project.
And I'm sorry, I did say final. And my understanding is ballpark figure, electing the organic alternative is going to run somewhere in the area of $400,000 additionally over present funding.
Approximately. We haven't done a full detailed assessment. Part of the outcome of yesterday's meeting was narrowed down, and we were asked or tasked with putting together a more detailed estimate for two of the alternate infills. So apologies, I haven't had time yet to do that as of this morning. But we were tasked to look at changing the design, what that would entail, and the cost that would go into that for a ballpark. But that sheet there is general, kind of big picture, conceptual type cost estimating numbers we use.
So, Mr. Good, just to be clear, you weren't ordered to change any designs. We're still in the talking phase right now.
Correct.
We're looking at options.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Esposito?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you describe what the organic infill is like?
It is, depending on which one, there's corn husk, there's coconut, it's ground up, shredded material that goes in the field. I didn't bring a sample.
So would you describe it as basically as mulch? It's mulch that you would, similar to mulch you would put in your garden?
2 in a way out there. As we discussed yesterday, some of the concerns with it are during summer months, it does need to be watered so that it can maintain a certain moisture content. Otherwise, it will dry with. It also can have a tendency to break down. It's a natural material, like mulch, in that way that it can break down.
When it breaks down, does it fill in and clog below? Will it clog the fibers of the carpet?
We don't know yet. What we're seeing in Europe, they're saying it's not. I have physically not seen one. There are some here in the U.S. that are starting to go on the longer lifespan, but again, it's a relatively new, I mean it's not 20, 25 years old like some of the others that are out here. We are seeing that those fields tend to be okay. There have been some reports of in heavy downpours or rains that it can be susceptible to retain water, so the field would not.
Has there been a higher injury rate on that? Is there any studies showing? I mean,
I don't know that.
Being a football player, a lacrosse player, playing football or lacrosse on mulch is far different than playing on a turf field from rubber, which I have.
One more thing we did look at as a committee is the overall usage of the fields. That was very important because that's been the need of the community. And when we're looking at alternate fills, you're not going to be able to use the fields as much as you are with chrome rubber because certain weather events, you're going to have to shut the fields down.
Follow. Were you involved in the Canterbury installation?
I was not.
Okay. And I think the committee had spoken to some of the people at Canterbury.
The feasibility.
The feasibility committee. Would many of us characterize the Canterbury School in town as a diligent or an organization that would have due diligence to making sure they would protect their students, private kids from around the world that go to this school? They install the field with chrome rubber. I mean, I would think that we would look to some of our neighboring educational institutions for a little bit of information. The last question I have basically here is for the mayor. if we are going to go towards an organic infill, then we are basically, I'm gonna ask you the question here. Will you be prohibiting all of these people's children in this room from playing at all of these other schools that have crumb rubber based on the same issue that you have of safety and their health? Because that's basically,
There's
in my
only so much
summarization, it
control in
sounds
this life. Let me answer that question. From a practical matter, there's only so much control. We as a community have control over what we do. So that's where our influence ends. Now, are they gonna play on other fields that have crumb rubber? Yes, they are. But as a community, we could say that we value X over costs, health over cost, the potential impacts to an environment, I've heard this product over, something that's, quite frankly, has a suspicious pedigree. So,
Well, then
no,
we're
you
talking-
can't
we're
prevent
talking
them
about
from
the same
playing at
thing.
any other, you can't prevent them from playing at any other fields. But in terms of practicing on that field day in and day out, in terms of, providing facilities for children going up from kindergarten all the way up to high school, to college, and to adults, we could say that in New Milford, we support, the safer alternative.
Well, I would assume we would support making sure that there's no paint thinner on those fields to release those chemicals. Is that correct? I would assume we're not gonna do that, right? We're not gonna put paint thinner on the field? I would think, well, because paint thinner was talked about in the study that showed the extraction of all those chemicals that you're
You
assuming.
realize that chemicals could leach out of something without paint thinner. That happens immediately. Over 10 years, you tell me that none of those carcinogens are going to leak out of that field. You could guarantee to me and my children that those carcinogens
My
are
kids
not
are
going to
gonna,
leach out of that
my
field.
kids are gonna play in that same field like
Yeah.
yours are.
So you can
But
make
every
that
other
choice for
school,
you.
every other
You don't
school
get
in
to
the
make the choice
state,
for me, though.
I'm not, but the town voted on this. This went to a town meeting.
Okay.
The town, that is the way the charter reads here. The town voted to move this project
It went to
forward.
referendum?
It went to town meeting.
A point of information, that was a meeting to fund the project, it was not a meeting to authorize the project.
Fair. So,
Just in my final questions.
I'm sorry, Ms. Francis has been waiting patiently.
I just have a quick question. I believe from the past meetings we had with you, that using the rubber fill, that is not coming from any overseas source. It's all done here, correct?
Correct.
That's where your studies come from. And the organic, whichever one might want, is that also the same? I know we don't really grow coconuts so much, but is it processed here, tested, where does it come from?
It comes from all over. We would potentially look to do the same type of specification to source it from here. The testing we've seen has kind of been all over. Again, it's a new product, so limited testing on it. They range from some of the products manufacturers show very little or no leachate or under the or below the acceptable limits. Others, testing has shown that they are susceptible to leaching of PHA out of them.
How many years in either Europe or here would you say organic has been used?
My understanding is in Europe, there's some fields going on 10, 15 years where it's been done over there with their products. Here, my understanding is it's less than 10. There may be a few that are older. Again, it's hard to track all of that. Not everybody wants to share all their information.
Ms. Richardson.
Would you be able to get the council more information on the European fields that are using the organic to address issues with the availability and supply on them?
I can look into it. I will see also what region. Again, that's part of what was discussed yesterday too. Was a point of our concern as the engineer on this is that with an organic being susceptible to frost susceptibility, you do have to caution the ability to keep the Gmax and the HIC, which equates to, as we've a lot of seen in the news, concussion levels at an acceptable level below the ASTM in certain weather conditions. So, as the engineer, we did note that may be something that you want to make sure you're aware of moving forward with it. And that I've reached out to the current vendor, manufacturer of the turf field. They in fact did install 2 of the organic ones at the private school I believe in Greenwich in the past year, and that was something that was discussed, and they know on their record that certain times of year they have to be cautious of the safety of it because of that. Was that?
Because it's
also have implemented the irrigation and maintenance program that goes along with this.
Just one further question, here, just to clarify, what is the Synthetic Turf Council?
It's an organization that is involved in, basically, it's an organization that's a sort of a clearinghouse for the industry. Everything from turf, landscape, sports fields, playscapes, infill materials, base design below. It's a combination of engineers, suppliers, manufacturers, testing agencies, contractors.
BCS is a part of that, right?
BSC group.
Excuse me, BSC is a part of that. Is it a trade group? Because a lot of the same studies that you're referencing come straight from their website in terms of how to address the community and any fears about crumb rubber. So, I mean, is it funded by, the crumb rubber industry?
No, it's not. In fact, BSC is a certified design consultant by them, which means that we're completely independent of any manufacturers or products. That's how we do all of our projects. We don't come up here and talk about one manufacturer. We base our designs based on the information out there. There are other organizations that are funded, Safe Build Alliance, Cal Recycling, which are independently funded by some of us. Again, Synthetic Turf Council, many of those studies there, they're not funded by that organization. It's just that they house them. Those studies, as well as many others, can also be found on the Penn State Turf Management website there. I just tend to use the Synthetic Turf Council because I know that website and I can find information. They also have information on the other infills there, fiber pipes, all of that as well.
Mr. Smith?
As it relates to the organic infill as an alternative, I just want to confirm that we're going to be looking at not only safety from a concussion perspective, we're looking at it compared to the crumb rubber, but also from a chemical testing perspective on those products as well. Something like a corn husk, I would imagine, is treated with pesticides or something like that. So I'd like to see that testing information just as a comparison. As it relates to this Yale study, just to clarify, my understanding, because I take my charge seriously as a town councilman. You may remember when we were doing the joint board of finance and town council, I was probably the most pessimistic person with respect to synthetic turf in the town of New Milford. I questioned you guys up and down. I spent dozens and dozens of hours researching it to make sure that you did your due diligence. So similarly, I now hear about this Yale study. My understanding is that EHHI, who presented to you on Wednesday, is the one who funded the Yale study. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding.
And they're an anti-turf organization based on their website.
Yes, they were also involved with, at the time, Attorney General Blumenthal in 2007, was looking to put a moratorium on fields here, which is what led to the studies by the health.
So I can't find this study. So apparently it's not published, it's not peer-reviewed, it hasn't been reviewed by independent sources, and I'd really love to see this study that everyone's referring to, but for some reason, I can't get a hold of it. Do you have it?
I'll get it to you, I found it. I'll print it
Because
out.
all I found was the summary. I found the summary from EHHI, and I found the toxicologist report where they used methylene. Typically so I started looking at these studies when you were it was your associate was presenting to us. And I'm like, how did they determine if this hurts the people? And what I found was they were using things like synthetic saliva, synthetic perspiration. They were making like synthetic gastric juice. So if you took in the crumb rubber, how would that impact your stomach contents? So then I start looking at this EHHI study and come to find out the way that all of these toxins that are referred to tonight is released is by applying methylene chloride. So then I start Googling that. I go to Home Depot today. It's the most caustic paint stripper that's available, and it actually isn't, it's only available in a diluted form. So to me, we're saying earlier we got to use common sense. I wholeheartedly agree we need to use common sense. So there's an article in the newspaper about 2 weeks ago about this water main. I'm a professional engineer by trade. That's what I do. I oversee the construction of infrastructure. Do water mains go underneath roads and state highways? Do water mains go underneath parking lots?
Yes.
Water mains by code have to be a minimum of 4 feet. And these are 6 to 8 feet or 2 to 4 feet deeper than what's required by code, correct?
Our understanding is yes. From what we
Same
found.
thing with
that-
sewer mains. Do those go under state highways? Do those go under roads? Do those go under parking lots? I mean, this is run-of-the-course stuff. This is stuff where if you're in the trade, this is total common sense.
Mr. Szymanski, if a water main breaks under a road, it doesn't destroy the road, we fix it.
No, it
breaks under
destroys the road with all due
a $4
respect.
million, piece of product that we're putting in, doesn't that, bear a little bit of difference?
No,
I mean,
a
are
$4
you
million
talking about-
project, first of all, my understanding is the budget's around $3.5 million. That consists of the lighting, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Let's say
Then
$1
you
million
have two
project.
separate fields.
Sure, let's say $1 million project.
But you're making where are you making the assumption that it's gonna break? It's gonna break in one area. It's not gonna break along the entire 100 feet.
Okay, so what you're saying is, let's say it breaks on Friday night, and, we don't discover it till Monday morning. I mean, can't that destroy the entire field?
Just as it can destroy a parking lot, just as it can destroy a road.
Well,
And we're talking, we have our town engineer throwing numbers of $100,000 around. So even if you want to relocate that water main,
Yeah.
that number's totally unrealistic and high. Let's give some reality to this, and let's use our brains. And, I was...
Excuse me,
I'm
President,
still
it did
speaking.
break. It did break.
No, it didn't. You don't understand.
Water came out of the ground from a pipe.
No,
Water
it came
from
from a valve.
It came out of the ground from a pipe.
You are factually incorrect. It is not the
Valve?
water. A
Okay.
water main is completely different than a valve. You can ask any of the people in the construction industry
So the
here
valve
who
broke,
deal
right?
with it on a day-to-day basis.
So is it, are you saying then we should just build the field on top of it? We shouldn't move the
The
water?
valve is not within the field.
Whatever. What is
No,
your-
no, it's
what is
not
your-
whatever.
what
We're
is your
charged with the
recommendation
detailed analysis.
for this. It is whatever. What is your recommendation? So,
In my professional opinion, I think the water main is fine where it is, but if we want to move it out of an abundance of caution, it's a negligible amount in the cost of construction, and all we've done is focus on it for 2 council meetings. It's absurd. I'm sorry. That's my professional opinion as an engineer who oversees this stuff, not as someone who can't understand the difference between a water main and a valve and why a valve would potentially leak for not being used on a day-to-day basis. We see that happen all the time with valves. If you don't use them, if you're not exercising them, they're bound to fail.
okay, very good.
Thank you.
Anything else in terms of the updates?
I think our next step is to work on those cost estimates for the alternates. We have a meeting tomorrow night to discuss that and also the water line potential relocation at the meeting. And then all that I ask here, if there's anything else, I know they overseas, we'll look to get some information from what we can on those. If there's anything else, I just ask, feel free to ask now so we
And
can.
one
do
last
it
thing,
tomorrow.
Mayor, just trying to get direction from you. There's all sorts of things swirling around about who is doing what and who's responsible for what and how things go. My committee members want to know, is this committee something that you plan on continuing on till the end of the project?
The
Do
committee,
we have the opportunity to do what we're doing now, or what's your thought process?
And I said the same thing to Luke. I mean, you're there to make, to go through the process, to make recommendations and to report. So I'm not stopping that. I appreciate being in, making the recommendations and reports to me before a decision is actually made, especially if another contract is being signed or a decision is made, to take one avenue versus another. But that's fine. Just include me in the process.
Love to, you're a member, Mayor.
I know.
I
I'm a
also
member of a lot
like
of
to
boards.
Okay. I'd also like to get clarification. In the minutes of March 23rd, 2015, where I actually made the motion for the, and it was unanimously approved, for the creation of the committee.
Sure.
In the second paragraph, and I'll give this to you for the minutes, the third paragraph of the committee said, the committee shall assist and make recommendations to the purchasing authority pertaining to project cost estimates, shall assist the authority in soliciting proposals, and shall provide oversight and recommendations concerning the design and construction of the 2 artificial athletic fields and the Milford High School to be sited in a general location identified by the feasibility committee. So I am under the assumption oversight means that we actually do something with the project. So I just want to clarify with you what your thought process is on that.
I don't understand actually what your question is. This was in the beginning, before the contract was even signed, and it was going out to bid. So the committee was making recommendations to the purchasing authority, which ultimately has the final authority in actually choosing and awarding a contract to a bidder, right? So nothing has changed regarding that. And so you made a recommendation, bidder was awarded the contract, and so that's kind of taken care of. Now, I guess if it goes back out to bid, or if a secondary contract is being recommended for this water main issue, I would imagine it would follow the same procedure. I mean, we would go through the purchasing authority, we kind of go through it that way, right? Unless you have a different interpretation.
Mayor, I'm asking you.
And that seems to be what the minutes say, right? What the motion, the resolutions.
Well, I'm talking about the creation of the subcommittee. So are you still allowing us to oversee the building design?
I have no authority to remove the subcommittee, and I've never said I was removing the subcommittee from its authority that was issued by the town council. If the town council, wants to suspend the subcommittee, that's something for them to take up. But as of now, it's status quo. Just follow the mandate of the minutes. Yeah.
And also, as we've talked about the swirling speculation on social media, some people put in there that this is just a temporary committee anyway. So I'm hoping that we can have your reassurance that we do expire as a subcommittee in March, but that you would allow us to see this through to the end of the committee. I'm hoping you'll allow us to do that.
I would just mention that I would just point out to the councilman that the term temporary is as opposed to standing or existing under the charter of the town of New Milford. So I mean, it's not a derisive term. It's just descriptive of the nature of the entity.
Yeah, I mean, you're there till March until, unless something else happens or, extends it.
So you foresee, if everything is going, to continue it until we finish the project?
I have no idea. I just said if the town council votes to, suspend you for whatever reason, then you suspend it. Right now, if we follow the mandate, keep everybody in the loop, I don't see any issue with it. Like I said, you're there to make recommendations and report. So you make recommendations and report, and either myself or the town council has the final say on it. As long as we stick to that framework, I don't see any problems. If the committee is making decisions and not including either myself or the town council in those decisions, then you probably don't have a problem. But, I think you understand the situation.
Thank you.
I can't see that. Thank
you.
All right.
Say for one, I will support your committee.
Okay. There was a Mr. Kasevich in the audience. Mr. Kasevich, would you, I understand you're one of you're involved in installing the alternative to chrome rubber. Can you give us, a brief kind of overview of what you do and maybe an opinion on some of the stuff you've heard here tonight?
Sure.
Thank you.
I was asked to,
Well, you can,
sorry.
you go up to the podium.
Just as a point of order, is he part of the committee in the update?
No, well, he's part of the update, but he's not part of the committee.
Was he noted on the
Is it on the agenda?
Well, I'm inviting him to provide an update.
Or he's not on the agenda?
Parliamentarian, as a point of order, is this on the agenda?
The discussion is on the agenda and is within the purview of the chair.
As artificial construction committee, is he a part of the committee? As a
You
point of
don't have to be. Many people have been discussing matters before this.
From the town council.
I think it's relevant to the issue. Sir, you're not expecting a long, speech or demonstration, are you? We're just looking for 5 minutes in terms of your point of view on this issue as somebody who deals on the other side of rubber and installs.
Sure. So, for the record, my name is Joe Kasevich. I'm the New England Territory Manager for Shaw Sports Turf. We're one of the premier manufacturers and installers of synthetic turf. And we are the exclusive distributor of GeoFill in the United States, which is the organic product that's been mentioned.
And just for the record, GeoFill is one of the manufacturers that's listed by BSC as one of the people that they would reach out to in terms of their getting an estimate.
GeoFill is the product.
Okay, yeah, GeoFill.
Okay. So we do work with BSC Group a lot. We have a lot of respect For Luke and his, and the VSC group, I just want to point that out. I was invited here literally this afternoon. Some of the, one of the reasons I love working for Shaw Sports Turf, as Luke will attest, is we operate the largest and most comprehensive in-house R&D facility of any turf company, bar none. Our director of R&D, Dr. Phil Strickland, is an esteemed person in our industry. The GFO product has been fully vetted. A lot of the comments this evening, whether it's about SBR or organic, some of it was factual, and quite frankly, some of it is absolute nonsense. If you're interested in facts, I'll be happy to provide you with facts. It's not mulch, which is, ground up bark. Shaw Sports Turf is a FIFA licensee, which means that we pay a fee to FIFA for the privilege of developing, manufacturing, and installing FIFA certified fields. The system that which means it's a very stringent two-part process to achieve FIFA certification. The system that we have engineered is a FIFA one-star certified field that is comprised of a 1 3/4 inch turf product, a geofill sand infill mix, which is installed on top of what's referred to in our industry as a shock pad. That's a FIFA one-star certified field, meaning it goes through a battery of tests relative to player safety, player performance, the durability, and the aesthetics. Those are what we call the big four in our industry. Italy was the first country to bar SBR fields many, many years ago. It's not surprising that an Italian company called Green is the manufacturer of geofill. Geofill is by far the most proven alternate infill available in the industry. There are over 500 geofill installations across the world, 5 different continents, a variety of different climates. We have fully vetted not only how to install it, but also how to maintain it. And also,
is it an alternative? Is it a viable alternative to chrome rubber?
Sure. I mean, there's 500 of them across the country. In the world. In the United States, there's 8. As was mentioned, we installed 2 fields in Pleasantville High School in New York this past summer of 2015 with geofill. There's another one in Shady Hill School in Cambridge, Mass. The town of Wilton, Connecticut has expressed a lot of interest in the geofill. It'll be up for vote for town meeting. We have 4 in California, one of which is 7.6 acres, a 7.6 acre intramural field at Santa Clara University.
If you don't mind me asking, why generally are people, choosing your product as over, chrome rubber, which is apparently cheaper and easier to maintain and everything else?
Right. Well, I mean, there are concerns about SBR, concerns. However, as some of the information that has been postured here tonight, there isn't anything proven about SBR. And again, just for the record, because again, I deal in facts. Dr. Laura Green, who the chairman mentioned this evening, Dr. Green has been retained by Shaw Sports Turf. She did produce a 12-page study about SBR. She doesn't find any reason to be concerned about SBR. We offer geofill as an alternate. We will also install other alternate infills such as TPE, EDPM. However, Dr. Strickland has put together a very informative alternate infill chart comparing the different infills, alternate infills, TPE, EPM, and there are three concerns, or three things to look at when you consider any alternate infill, whether it's geofill, TPE. One is a reputable supplier. As Luke will attest, there are some viable suppliers out there, and there are some not so believable ones. Number two, the cost differential. And number three, has it been fully vetted? Has it been tested? You are building an athletic field. These materials should be tested for, again, performance, safety, durability, and aesthetics. I spoke to one of the salesmen representing one of the alternate infills, and when I asked him the question, has your company tested your product? And I was amazed at his answer. No, we haven't tested it. We rely on the turf guys to do that. So those are the three things you have to look at, no matter what alternate infill you consider. And we are very pleased at the decision of Montgomery County School Board, as the chairman alluded to. They conducted a 3-year study. They hired an industry expert to look at every alternate infill available on the market, and we're very pleased. They recommended our geofill product. They're going to be replacing 50 turf fields in that county over the next 7 or 8 years. And one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that he recommended the geofill product is because it has been fully tested in our lab by Dr. Strickland and is a FIFA 1-star. So, to summarize, we do not feel there is enough evidence to say that SBR is in fact carcinogenic. There are additional studies that will take place, but we feel it is incumbent upon us, our company, to offer viable, fully tested alternate infills to make available to our customers. And we can look anybody in the eye and say the geofill has been fully vetted in terms of performance and full of safety. We know exactly how to maintain it. And again, some of the comments tonight about fungus, and you have to shut it down because of rain events, is nonsense. Okay? There are geofill fields in the Ukraine. And we talk about an adverse weather climate. So, I guess that's where
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. Did you guys do the field at Lyman Hall?
Yes.
And what field did they use?
What, rubber?
Yeah.
Yes,
They
we have.
They use chrome rubber?
Yep.
Thank
So
you.
you use both, you're not exclusively to an alternative.
Thank you.
I don't appreciate your reference. I
I'm
just
not-
said,
I'm not
we
approving.
do not believe there's anything wrong with SBR, but we offer
Appreciate that.
alternate infills.
We
Okay,
appreciate
for the
it.
record, with the BSC group, we also installed the field at Loomis Chafee School with SBR.
Thank you.
But we also installed 2 fields at Pleasantville, New York with geofill.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Thank you, sir. Anything else? Thank you.
There's another question.
Sir, can I just
Oh, no,
ask you-
I think he's done, he doesn't,
I have a couple of questions.
Came up to,
Do you have, Luke was throwing numbers around with maintenance, but you provide the products. Do you have an idea of what the cost for the maintenance is per field per year?
Luke was correct.
Okay,
When
well,
he's-
you do this one, so I figured you'd be more up to speed on it.
No, but Luke was correct in stating that every couple of years, since geofill is an organic product, as the athletes play on it, they do break it down. So it does have to be top dressed every couple of years. You would have to, just like when you measure whether or not you have enough SBR, there is a device that you put into the infill and measure, do you have enough or not?
Yeah.
Okay, and Our estimate is that you would probably have to top dress, a typical field is 80,000 square feet. That's a typical field. 8 to 9 bags of geofill every couple of years. The cost of that would be $10,000 to $15,000 a year. We do have plenty of geofill in Georgia, so it's not like we'd have to order it from Italy.
And does that include that 10 to 15,000 number, include the added maintenance? I guess you have to redistribute the...
Well, you do the same grooming that you do for an SBR field, which is to make sure that the fibers are upright, make sure that the infill depth is consistent. You have to do that in an SBR
So
field.
it's the same no matter what?
No, one added step, to be perfectly fair, okay, with the geofill field. The geofill field has, in proportion to an SBR field, it has more sand, okay, in the infill. And the reason for that is geofill does not weigh as much as SBR. It's lighter. So to physically hold the turf in place, you have to have more sand. So the added maintenance step I'm referring to is once a year, there's an attachment on the machine that you drag called the tine rake. And that's set at a depth so that it breaks up that sand and prevents it from compacting.
Any weed control needed because it's organic?
That's an excellent question. We haven't seen the need for that in the fields here in the United States. We don't think it would be to the point, any weeds that might grow, we feel you could pull them up.
Does it irrigate it?
Another excellent question. The geofill needs to have a 30 to 40% moisture content for optimal play. To take the guesswork out of that, we have an instrument that you literally insert into the geofill that'll tell you if you have it or not. The geofill will draw moisture from the air into the geofill. So one of the things I always do prior to talking to folks about their town is I Google your annual rainfall and your annual relative humidity. New Milford has an annual relative humidity of 80%, and you have an annual rainfall of 48 inches per year. The two geofill fields in Shady Hill School in Cambridge, Mass. are 4 years old. He's never watered them once. The other benefit of the geofill that hasn't been talked about is because it does draw moisture, from the air. A typical geofill field will be approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than an SBR field.
That's great. And then on your website, I noted that in order to prevent frost, salt can be used twice per year.
Yes.
So that's a recommended application of salt to the field.
Again, our director of special projects, Chris Small, spent an entire week in Italy with the Italy Green people, talking exclusively about how to properly maintain the geofill fields. I will say that whether it's SBR or geofill, fields freeze over the winter, to be perfectly fair. But you're right. We recommend 2 times per year adding salt.
And then the final question, from a safety concussion perspective, does it have the same level of protection and guarantees that the crumb rubber has?
It does.
Okay, great.
So getting back to the FIFA one-star certification, GMAX is one of those criteria that goes into the FIFA one-star certification.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Move on to formally item number 3. I'm not sure what it is now. But that was the approval of the prior minutes. Yeah.
Second, changes, under number 4, comments, third paragraph.
party member versus Democrat. So just to confirm with the town attorney, that's acceptable that we approve them as their wrong party affiliation?
As I understand it, right, as I understand it, the prior appointment, this is a person that is filling a vacancy, is that correct?
No, he's already on the committee.
And all you're doing is reappointing him?
Specifically as to which appointment, there were two appointments, Mr.
Yeah, I think I got
Yeah,
confused.
one was a reappointment and one was a new appointment. They were both acting in the correct party affiliation.
And as he was appointed, it was an inaccurate recitation of his party.
Both of them.
But I believe we looked into this and it did not run afoul of the minority party representation rule in the statute.
So whether they're reappointed or it doesn't matter, I just wanted to.
It didn't matter to us.
And then the only other thing was in the minutes under health department, that doesn't represent what the motion was. Number 8, health department, Katie made the motion, and the motion that she made was to just read the agenda item. It didn't include the whole resolution. So I just think the minutes should reflect what was approved.
I guess the resolution was attached to the agenda.
But historic, what would read that, then? We always, we did not.
No, I only said, you know,
Motion to approve the
accept,
resolution.
for you to do it.
And the resolution was attached, so.
Correct, but the minutes are stating that this was read into the record, it was not. So can we amend the minutes to reflect that it was referred to but not read into the record? I just wanted to represent what happened, that's all.
Refer to, instead of read to the record.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Okay, with those changes, is there a motion to adopt?
I said second.
Okay, second.
Aye.
As amended. To the agenda item, previously number 4, the appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. There is an appointment on a vacancy replacing Phyllis Alicio, who is a Democrat who resigns. Let's replace her with Miyako Kiyashita. She is a director at Green Chimneys in Brewster. She's very much involved in youth programs and is actually a leader in her field. So I'll entertain a motion to appoint her to the agency.
Make a motion to appoint Miyako Kinoshita, second, Democrat, for the term 2/8, 2016 to 11/30/2016.
Any further discussion? Or was it seconded? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. And the reappointment is for Joyce Hermanat, who has been on the Library Board of Trustees. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're skipping ahead to formally number 6, the proclamation. And I'm very sorry for everybody that's here on behalf of the Plastic Anemia Awareness Week. This is a proclamation that is being endorsed by myself and by the town council. And it's Operation Wear Red, February 29th, 2016. And this was formed in honor of local resident Julia Melson, who's been working with families affected by aplastic anemia and funding for research. And Operation Wear Red is an opportunity for the community to demonstrate support for this very worthy and very inspiring cause. So I would move the proclamation be adopted by the town council. I don't move.
I move.
Entertain a move.
I move that the proclamation as attached be approved by the town council.
Thank you very much. And this was, in memory of Julia Halson, who was the daughter of Sherman residents who did lose her battle with aplastic anemia at the age of 13. So we certainly do commend the family's efforts in bringing awareness to this issue and wish you luck and any support that the town of Milford can offer you. So all in favor of the proclamation? I feel more comfortable talking with facilities about that.
Okay.
If there's
As
any
long as it's,
security concerns or
yeah,
anything like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's table that until I kind of get an idea from facilities if they have any concerns.
Yeah, just in the spirit of the freedom from.
It's excellent thought. So was it seconded?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstains. Thank you very much, and the proclamation is officially entered. And I'll present that to
Could we have a couple words from them? Since
Sure,
they're so
yeah.
patient and waiting.
Somebody from the organization that can step forward and address the council.
Okay, I'm sweating in there, just thinking of all this. Well, thank you guys for having us, and it's really an honor of our daughter Julia. We just want to keep raising awareness. Brain plastic anemia, it's a rare disease that Julia suffered for a year, and we're researching funds, and we're trying to create awareness, and so everyone knows about stuff. And it's small, but we're getting there. We're across. We've got great members, and our daughter Alyssa, who's been involved, and so we got new members, Amber and Kate back there, Andy. So we have a lot of good people on board to help out the lead.
I understand. I should put you guys first. I apologize.
I was about to say something about the turf, but thank you guys.
Well, thank you very much.
It means a lot to us to have this.
And I'm happy to present the proclamation on behalf of the town council to you, and I wish you luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. We had tax collector, item folder number 7, refund February 2016.
So moved. Can we put the balance of the February refunds of $14,970.11?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, thank you for your patience as well. Commission on Aging, for discussion of possible action to apply for grant funds for the amount of $80,000 through the Federal Transit Administration's blah, blah, blah. Would you like to just give a brief overview? Okay, sure. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Commission of Aging apply for the grant funds in the amount of $80,000 through the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 FFY 2015 to enhance mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities to purchase a bus.
Second.
The grant also will require $20,000 matching.
Any discussion? Thank you so much.
For those who don't know me, I'm Carolyn Hagelin, Director of Senior Services, and this is our third round of trying to get a bus. We have one from 2010, we have one from 2014, and we need another bus. We're replacing our third spare bus, which is a 2003, and has 100,000 miles on it, but that's a spare. The 2010 bus has 100,000 miles on it, and it's already 5 years old, and the lifespan of these buses are 4 years and 100,000 miles. We really need to replace the 2010. 2010 will become our third spare, which we do use. We have a substitute driver, a third driver that does midday rides for us. They get a lot of use. We have the largest town in Connecticut. Lots of miles we cover. We have 150 clients that use the bus for medical appointments, work, shopping, coming to the center for the nutrition program and the social and recreation programs we hold. Our drivers do about 30,000 miles a year. Yeah, it's a lot of driving. So, it's needed and it's well used.
It's an 80-20 match, so 20% from the town and 80% from the state, figuring that would cost $100,000, right?
And it takes, some time. I need a motion to accept, and then I can apply for the grant. They don't let us apply for the grant without knowing that the town is supporting us.
Sure. Mr. Bass?
Thank you, Mayor. Carolyn,
for 2 years, right? So the fact that it's been authorized with the $20,000 authorization as well, maybe it's okay, but if anybody has it,
Do you know, Carolyn, for your application, what makes it strongest with respect to the?
That a motion was made that
We
you're
will
accepting
commit 20,000.
the 20,000. They don't know where it comes from. Actually, you know, in 2014 bus, which was supposed to be 13, we were very lucky, we had a newer bus. The Lions Club helped us with that funding, and that, you know, they don't really care where the money comes from, they're only kind of supporting the match. That's all they care about.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol.
And I know we had, very briefly, item B was an update on the senior center expansion project we ran along today. I guess, without time to have.
My name's David Lunchman with Silver Countryside Associates. We were hired to design the expansion for the senior center. It's approximately 1,900 square foot addition off the back of the building to meet the growing needs. Lots of drawings along there. So as you see from the first image, this just shows the image from the rear parking lot and the entrance area. The addition is going to be matching the existing building in materials and portion quite well, trying to really match that, exactly, be respectful of the original building. And second page that shows our floor plan layout where we eventually added a proposed recreation room with three pairs of doors back to the original recreation room, and a bank of toilets and men's and ladies' toilet rooms off the side with a new covered walkway leading back to the original main entrance.
What do you have to dig up there? When you're pushing out, you gotta.
Tanks underneath the...
Yeah, there's a propane tank, and there's also a oil tank, and a generator. There's quite a bit of civil related work as well.
Oh, I think it looks like a great addition.
That looks great, so it's going to go out. So the next step will be going out to bid, right, for actual,
We're looking to go out to bid probably in April, and then award probably in May, mid-May, and then construction will start probably, I would say June, and then completion will be sometime like late September or October.
any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, just so we know, how the seating capacity within the recreation room, how much will it add? Is that
The
one of the
new
things
portion
that-
alone, it'll be, if we go by seating alone, which has a different occupancy calculation, it's 186 people that will be added.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was here, so that's awesome. Okay. Yeah?
All right.
Can you walk?
Thank you very much for, if there's no further questions, thank you for the update. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Moving on to item 9, Mayor's Office, subsection A, is discussion of possible action on a resolution of endorsement and authorization of the RPI incentive program proposals by the mayor to accept the data acquisition for regional GIS services to fiber networks study. Hello, sir, how are you?
Hi, my name is Carl Zimmerman. I'm from Westcott, a regional planning agency that I work for you. And I'm here just to ask for your help in getting a resolution endorsement and authorization for the two grants. One is for acquisition of regional gas data, and the other one is for a fiber network study. I'll be perfectly candid. The first one is my area of expertise. I wrote the grant. The second area I'm presenting as basically as an act of goodwill for the Northwest Hills, but it's also equally commendable project. The data acquisition project is a second phase of a work that was started before the two regional entities, SWRPA and HEPCO, came together. We're now an 18-town entity. SWRPA received $2 million in 2011 to put together a GIS data set and a web mapping service that's like a Google Earth for the 18 towns of WestCog. That money was spent on imagery and topography that engineers use and what's called plan metrics. That's the buildings, roads, and sidewalks, among other things that you see in the map. So it's an extremely high quality data set. It was built, it's available. We had, because we used our money judiciously, we had money left over to provide some of the same services for the northern 10 towns. And we've had imagery flown for the 10 towns up here. Plus we've acquired topography, which allows engineers to do a lot of site work and very good for environmental work. We don't have quite enough money to do exactly what we did in the south, which is include the building footprints, the driveways, and the sidewalks, among many other things. This grant that we submitted to OPM would fill in that, so all the towns, all 18 towns would have equal data. There are several benefits. The first one is that your town departments like engineering, public works, planning would all have up-to-date, very high-resolution information which to do planning and analysis of problems. It would be available to the public as well through a web mapping service. The other benefit is that as a COG, our job is to help towns in the region. We can do analysis of traffic, environmental work, different kinds of energy or other sorts of projects, and we can do it all in one similar data set. So we can work across the entire region in a very efficient manner with an equal amount of accuracy and quality for all the 18 towns. So what we'd like is your help with this resolution. We've already submitted the grant that was due on December 31st. It was for $1.4 million. It's already been accepted. They've done an initial review and they seem very excited about it. So we'd like your support on that, which is part of the process. We need your support so that we can get the grant approved. The Northwest Connecticut Fiber Network Study is a study for providing bandwidth to rural towns and homeowners, along with improved cell service. This, which was done mostly by Northwest Hills, apparently is a study for $200,000 to maximize the investment, public-private investment in this region to improve high-speed internet and cell service to rural customers out here.
Sure, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to allow Mayor Ronda to endorse and authorize the Architect Incentive Program proposals and to accept the data acquisition for Regional GIS Phase 2 and Northwest Connect Fiber Network Study.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Here.
Good to see you. Item formerly 9B, an update on my review of the Gentile tree care services bidding and billing activity. And this is in response to Ms. Francis' request for an update from the last town council meeting. From what we're able to gather so far, and I wanted to look at if any of these issues between the amount of the bid and the amount that was paid, and just again to reiterate, in 2010, 2011, Gentile was actually the second lowest bid. It wasn't the lowest bid, but it was awarded initially as the second lowest bid, $43,325, and they were paid $175,230 in that year. In 2012, the bid was extended, so it would be basically the same amount. They were paid $150,893. 2014-15, Gentile's tree bid was $58,740, and they were paid $142,764 in 2013, 2014, $123,790, and in 2015, $129,713, and just through 2016, the bid was awarded to Evans Tree Service. They were paid $4,295. So I wanted to make sure that none of this was, related to the emergency work. So we did kind of go back and look at it, and what we were able to kind of come up with was that in 2011, when there was Hurricane Irene and the October ice storm, there was a additional $62,110 in emergency work. That would have been in addition to the bid for that year, which was $43,325. There still would have been balance with the $175,230 that was ultimately paid. In 2012, with Hurricane Sandy, $5,145 we were able to document was paid for emergency work. And in 2013, what we were able to document was $8,400. And in 2014, that was a straight line windstorm. Emergency work totaled $15,540. And in 2015, $630. So this is based on our review of the invoices. I want to see if there was going to be any kind of, indication that maybe the emergency work was responsible for pushing the number up. But as you can see, it's not so significant that it would explain the variance between the bids and what was actually paid. So the work is, the investigation is ongoing. I'll reach out to Mr. Marcus and review his information to kind of compare notes, and I'm open to discussing it with him. Mr. Francis.
Thank you for that. It just seems to me that is in any business, and whether this is a municipality, we have to run things a little bit business-like, that when a purchase order is issued for X dollars for X work, if there is X plus or plus 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 to be done, the change order is traditionally done, or another purchase order is issued.
Yeah.
Unless it's a blanket purchase order, which allows the vendor to do work upon a signature of whomever issues it with the caveat that you're going to do it by the same amount or whatever additional, what I'm talking about.
Right.
So if that, and I don't have any reason to think that this wasn't all, obviously he did some work for whatever he got paid, I'm assuming. So, but going forward, is there some way that we could implement that type of a system so that we don't have a purchase order issued that is for X dollars that then becomes much more?
Yes.
Without any way, just as you said, without any way to figure out what it is. I think we're not doing what we're elected to do here if we're going to let that go on.
I agree 100%, and so I instituted going forward, number one, the use of purchase orders. If there's a purchase order for the bid amount of, let's say, $69,000, then that's what you're operating within. And when you go outside of it, we do have accounts that are dedicated to emergency work. So what I suggested also is that if you're going to bill for emergency work, you bill these emergency accounts because that's a separate budget item. So going forward, I think we'll be able to, number one, keep track of the bills, the work being performed, and distinguishing that because the emergency work is hourly, so that could throw things off significantly. But I think you're on track, and we're instituting that, and I'm certainly working with Public Works to make sure that they're actually on top of what work is being requested.
And other departments as well. I mean, I know there aren't any departments.
And with Parks and Rec as well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It just is a lot better bookkeeping all the way around. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, yes, Mrs. Smith.
So, based on your review so far, was Gentile paid for any work that he didn't perform?
I'm not seeing that there's any work that he didn't perform, but the way you look at the contracts, they would do a bid based on the tree diameter. And so let's say, 13 to 24 inches in diameter would be, let's say this was Emmons, so it would be bid 365. But what we're seeing is just no identification of how big the tree is, and we're just seeing a bill for like $1,000.
Where do they measure the diameter? Is that the trunk? At a certain...
Yes, from what I understand, it's the widest point, so it would be the trunk.
Whatever's the widest
Right.
point, I see, regardless of where it is on the.
Right, exactly, so they're taking the tree down, but the problem is, in the invoices that we're seeing, is that it's supposed to be distinguished based on the tree width, and that's supposed to set the price, and, sometimes we might see, a tree width, or we might see something that, doesn't have a tree width at all, and we'll just see, $1,000, or $1,500, or $2,000. And so it's very hard just from looking at the paper point of view, to figure out what was actually done. I would imagine it would have been hard for Public Works or Parks and Rec or anybody that was approving these. So there's got to be a better system in place where the trees are actually tagged, we know which trees are tagged and how big they are, and then you can match that up with the invoices as they come in. We've got the smart tablets and we've got enough GPS kind of tracking to do that, so I'll be working with them to tighten up that process at the end of the day.
But isn't that how the system was already set up? Because in their administration billing requirements, it says invoices are to be submitted monthly, must include the date and tag number of the trees. These invoices will be validated by comparing them to the daily work tickets submitted with the grass tree tags themselves. Any
Yeah.
discrepancies, and then it's in bold, will not be paid until any research or explanation is to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works.
I think that's where, the system might have,
So they could have been
Tripped
presented,
up a
but they
little bit,
didn't
yeah.
get maybe written into the
Yeah,
paperwork and.
exactly. So
Yeah.
looking back, I can't say exactly. Some invoices do identify, a tree, but, other invoices are just very general.
So, I just have one more question.
Yeah.
So, just to clarify, because I don't know if that was answered for the last meeting, what was the reason that Jim Field was not selected?
Well, there were a number of reasons, and that's a fair question. Number one was when I did look at this past history and I saw this difference, what I did see is that, like $150,000 would be budgeted, but the bid would be, like I said before, somewhere in the range of $43,000. So I had a concern about the discrepancy between what's being bid and what's being actually paid. So it certainly raised a red flag. And in this case specifically also, the bids itself were, for all intents and purposes, for the important items, were the same. The only difference is, where I don't have them in front of me again, was, on the hourly rates, and the hourly rates, Emmett was actually lower. But because it's based on a tree, per tree basis, 20 trees at a certain diameter and 30 trees at another diameter, when you look at those major indices, they were basically flat. So, in looking at the issue with what was paid and what was bid, and the relative comparison between the two bids, if you didn't just look at the bottom number, if you look at the detailed bids, they were basically the same. It was a judgment call to go with Evans as being in the best interest of the town, pursuant to the statute which gives the purchasing authority to consider the interest of the town in awarding bid.
Can we just get copies of those at some point for bids, so we can see them? Or the Board of Finance?
Board of Finance has the bids. Now, in terms of the bids themselves, you could ask them if they release them.
Thanks.
A couple of questions. First, is there any institutional framework that triggers a red flag when a bid ends up being significantly not in compliance? The concern I have, obviously, is, one can't help but look at the situation and look at an artificially low bid. That in itself is a concern as being fundamentally unfair to the process. Second of all, my concern is that our public works, after that happened, after Gentile significantly underbid that first year of contract, went on and waived the bidding process. Now my question is, how do we hold bidders to their bids? And how do we keep our agencies from waiving bid requirements, particularly on bidders that should be more closely supervised?
Right. I think on the first question is kind of in keeping with what, Ms. Francis and I were discussing, is that what I see right now, my 8 weeks of being in office, and I do go through every single purchase order to the chagrin of the finance department, is that the purchase order is really the item that triggers the red flag. So if you have a purchase order for the amount of the bid, The second you go over it, there's no authorization unless, you know, there's some kind of, it's gonna trigger a red flag, I mean, so I think that's something, it's a little bit more difficult than service contracts, but I think it's doable and it's clearly necessary in terms of oversight. On the second part of your question, how do we ensure that departments are properly overseeing some of these service contracts? That's a little bit more complicated, and I'll continue to work with them in terms of practical issues that they face. And, you know, ensuring that the invoices comport with, you know, the bidding requirements and everything else. But right now, I mean, quite frankly, that's a work in progress. So, we're working on a system to make sure that these kinds of discrepancies don't repeat themselves in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Using the terminology under bid, I just want to be clear, the price that was given was for a certain number of trees and certain numbers of emergency work. My understanding is that then the town requested additional work, whether it be Parks and Rec, Public Works, so he didn't underbid, he bid based on a hypothetical number of trees at certain calipers and a hypothetical number of emergency hours.
Yeah.
The town then requested that he use those unit rates and do certain work, so.
There's two different, and I can't say one way or another, but I think the bid itself was geared to also produce skewed results. So we've got to look at both sides of it. We've got to look at the bid that was issued from the agency, in this case it was Public Works, but you also have to look at how the town is being invoiced in conjunction with that bid, because frankly, going back, you can't just look at the invoices where you should be able to see, you know, invoice, whatever it is, 2 trees, X diameter, cost, and it should add up, you know, yeah, the invoices that are submitted and approved don't necessarily comply with that. So it's not all one-sided, it's definitely, you know, the town bears some looking at it as well.
Could we consider like the state bid instead of?
I've heard that.
Just because, you know,
I've heard
they
that.
do it for a living, you know, we use them for asphalt, we use them for catch basins, drainage, you know, we use the
State
state
bid.
bid on a lot of stuff.
It's been awarded this year, and as we kind of go into this next year and take a real close look at the bid, all those options are going to be kind of on the table. Right now, quite frankly, I don't know what state little bid involves in tree cutting services and who's on that list, but it might be to kind of hit a restart button to just say, we're going to let the state vet these people, but that's something that's definitely going to be considered.
You gotta take advantage of their efforts and stuff.
Yeah. And on a lot of issues, it's not just on this one as well.
No, we get a lot of efficiencies by using it.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be addressing that. Yes, Mr. Bass.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for my own edification, clarification, doing your due diligence, have you seen any miss or malfeasance on the part of Gentile Tree Care or Edmonds Tree Service?
You're using some loaded terms, you know, malfeasance. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I've still got some concerns about the invoices, and I'm not exactly able to match up or explain the discrepancy between what was bid, the emergency work that I can document that was performed, and the ultimate payments. So I've still got concerns, but I'm not going to go out there and say, you know, accuse anybody of malfeasance. It might be poor record keeping. It might be.
And poor record keeping, in your opinion, on behalf of the town, or poor record keeping on behalf of the vendor?
I don't have an opinion one way or another on that. I could say that the invoices, you know, you should be able to look back and identify tree costs, diameter, and we don't have the opportunity to do that based on the invoices that were submitted.
And in your opinion, in doing your due diligence, wouldn't that be on the onus of the town?
The onus of the town.
So if you're accepting an invoice, if you're allowing for payment, isn't that going to be the responsibility of the town to justify that the work was actually completed?
I'm not gonna lay any blame on the town right now. When you bid, it's a privilege to do work for the town, and you're basically saying when you submit that bid that you're going to comply with the requirements that were set forth in that bidding process. Now, and if you don't comply with those requirements, just because the town accepts an invoice isn't a waiver of those requirements. So I wouldn't lay it squarely at the town. The responsibility is always on the contractor to comply with his bid.
I'm not laying blame on any individual. I'm just saying you have 2 local businesses of New Milford that pay taxes to the town, that employ people. And I think if we're going to make assumptions of 2 particular business entities, we need to be very careful, because those people employ people, and those item 9B, we were given this, can you kind of explain this? to me?
Yes, that's to explain how the process got started. There was a lot of issue taken with the fact that, Emmons in this case was the second lowest bid. And you can see from that memo that's been attached that Gentile actually benefited when it was originally awarded the contract as the second lowest bid back in 2010, 2011. So it does give a little context in terms of the situation.
I've sat on the board now for, it's 12 or 13 years. I've never seen a memo redacted. I've never seen things blacked out, so I wonder if you could, A, let us know why this was blacked out, and B,
Sure.
I believe this is FOI.
Well, somebody could FOIA request it, and I would address the redaction appropriately. There's a party against whom allegations were made in this memo, and in the interest of protecting that party, that's what the redaction is based on.
Counter? Thank you.
Well, I can just
Is
simply,
there a question?
I can simply say, I'm not,
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure the question is being directed to our office, but did you have a question about?
Do you feel comfortable?
Is it in accordance with
Is this
FOI?
in accordance with FOI?
Well, nobody's FOIA'd it, so.
Yeah, I don't believe this document was FOIA'd and was
Right.
produced pursuant to a FOIA request. I believe this was generated by the mayor's office.
Right, so, I mean, that was my discretion to do that, nobody requested it. So, in making it a public document, I really did feel uncomfortable with some allegations that weren't necessarily substantiated, let's say that, use that as a word. Yes, Ms. Francis?
The subject of this document is
I know.
for the two four-door city,
I
and,
know, go figure. I don't think I had it, I think that might have just been a carryover from a prior memo.
oh,
I think that was just a scrivener's error.
okay.
Yeah. Yep, Mr. Basil.
Last question was, I want to know if you wanted to address, you had a member of the public address you concerning prior business relationship. I wanted to know if you wanted to expound on.
With me having a business relationship?
Would you, I guess, representing someone from?
Well, let me say, well, we're going to say in two parts. I don't have any relationship with them. I barely know the guy. So the implication that, I was friends with him or something like that. So have I had prior dealings with Gentile in the litigation? Yes, I have. And he did testify in a case in which I was involved in, and a jury rejected his testimony, just flat out. So, I use that as, for what it is. It raises an issue of credibility, but it's certainly not the only issue that's went into this decision. But I can't divorce myself from that experience, and from my experience on the purchasing authority, considerations of personal experience with various entities routinely come into play in whether or not to award a bid to a party or not. So that, I think, falls within the gamut of the statute, what was it, 2-92, in terms of awarding a bid in the best interest of the town.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one
Yes,
quick
sure.
thing? Is it standard practice in all departments within the town that if a purchase order, even if a bill is presented, doesn't someone from the department have to sign off on it?
Yes.
I mean, it's not just given to the accounts payable.
No, they have to sign off on it, that's right. And then
Okay, so there's some backtracking that can be done by somebody in each department to say, yes, we did this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure, based on something that was said, I thought maybe we could do that.
Yeah, that was done, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So piggybacking off of Councilman Francis, so I'm understanding, when the bills came in for payment, they were checked by?
Somebody in Public Works, it was,
That
I don't know, I don't want to say right now.
That was complete.
Well, they would sign off on the invoice, whether or not they actually went out there and verified physically that the work was completed. I don't think that's the process. They would just sign off on it, send it up to finance, and then it would.
I believe they actually did their due diligence and did what they
Right,
said.
but that's
So
SOP,
I'm-
is to have a
Right.
department.
Well, there does seem to be a question, if the basis for payment, as the mayor indicates, is on the size of the removal, then if those invoices are being paid without the size of the item being removed and being signed off. I have two problems. I have a problem with them not presenting a suitable bill that it comports with an amount of payment. And B, I have a problem with the town paying on an insufficient invoice.
And just to clarify, I mean, yeah, so the invoices are not uniform. The process is somebody in Public Works signs off on it, but again, they're not going out there, they're not really checking it, they're not checking to see, you know, the size of the tree or why, you know, more than what's kind of listed in the bid documents is being invoiced. So that's part of the failure of the process right now that we have to address as well. I don't think it's, you know, them signing off on it, I don't think it's a blanket representation that the work is done, or they're just signing off on it, frankly. So that's what we have to kind of address. Yes, Mr. Bass.
Thank you, Mayor. So it's not the people, it's the process that we're looking at kind of.
A little bit of both, to be perfectly honest. And, you know, I mean, if the bill isn't, you know, in conformance with the bid or isn't given the detail it's supposed to, then it's impossible for Public Works to sign off on it, quite frankly. And if they are signing off on it under those circumstances, then that's part of the problem. But, like I said, we've only really started this 2 weeks ago, and you know, we just got the invoices, I think just last week, late last week, so we're still kind of, it's ongoing. If you'd like another update, when I have a little more information, I'd be happy to do it. Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's coming in drips and drabs. This is budget season, so we're a little bit distracted as well. But I'll keep you guys updated. Okay, moving on to the joint budget meeting agenda. Okay.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Let's go.
5 minutes?
Yeah, let's do 10 o'clock, and if we get to 10 o'clock, we'll extend it again. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we're not going to do the joint budget meeting agenda, just as what it is. We'll publish it. So, item forward number 10, the Liverpool PD dispatcher contract. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the public. We will be inviting in Attorney Tower. Anybody else join that motion? Okay, let's hear about an executive session. Actually, so there'll be I'll entertain a resolution to approve what was discussed in the executive session, the ratification of the dispatch contract. Move the ratification. Okay, second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to, resolve to approve what was discussed in executive
Executive session.
regarding the penalty dispatch.
Respective.
Number 11. Oh, we did, yeah, everybody voted. Number 11, John, I'm just going to take this update on litigation, by Ms. Tammy Reardon. Litigation was withdrawn a couple of weeks ago, so as of now, there is no more pending litigation. If anything pops up, we'll let you guys know. So, pretty straightforward. We did 12 and 13. So, Public Works is getting beat up. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to authorize to approve a supplemental appropriation to the town share of the asset coverage for the project, second project 95-245. Total construction amount of $1,649,000, and it will require 10% match from the town for the amount of $329,800.
It's been seconded, and there's, Mr. Zarber, for discussion. Just briefly, generally, this is, yeah, Ms.
I
Frank.
have one quick question. Where is the 329.8 coming from? Just for,
Probably could address that.
Normally, I guess the proposal would be at the discretion of the Director of Finance.
and/or, well, at discretion of the Director of Finance, could be bond money as well.
This wasn't something that was specifically budgeted, you know, in the last budget or anything like that?
It's in the 5-year capital plan budget, so.
But
It's not approved, it hasn't been funded, but it's in the 5-year capital plan, it can be bonded.
The plan that you should go for.
will we have an account that has that much money in it this year to take it out of?
Current year, the only one I know would be undesignated surplus.
That has enough in it?
You'd have to ask the director.
I believe so.
Oh,
We spoke to Greg about this, and he didn't seem to, we spoke to Greg about this as well, and I know you did, that he didn't seem to have, and Ray Jankowski also was involved in this.
Yeah, I may be getting the terms wrong.
So could you just give us like two
So-
lines of what account it ends up coming from, so we know? Whoever it is.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe you said it, you already talked about it, so probably.
I think they did, they had a source available to, whether it's undesignated surplus.
There could be that much in there, I suppose.
Yeah, from what I understand, there would have been, there was a significant. But that was been money also, this is something that, so this is already, this would have already been completed, or
Yeah,
done?
what's basically happened, the process is, we go through an engineering design process. Once that final design gets done, permits are issued, go through a final construction cost estimate from the engineer. It's submitted to the DOT, or the liaison engineer in this case. It's a federal funded project, so it goes to a liaison engineer by the name of CJM. They do review, and they basically, what we have is what's called a master agreement with the state DOT to go into construction after final design. The master agreement, I believe what you guys got in the package was called, on top of the master agreement, there's a supplemental to that. Simplified contract, effectively, for a town, I'll call it PAL, project authorization letter, which is 3 or 4 pages that we got, indicating what basically the project consists of, the financing plan, and it references that master contract agreement that we entered into, which is a 10-year plan that has to be reviewed by. I believe it's probably 4 or 5 years ago that we entered into the master construction agreement. That just allows these projects to go through in a much quicker way without you guys having to do a resolution every single time we go to this process. There's no need to do resolutions for you to enter into that contract. You guys have already done that in a master format now.
So you were
So once again, at
saying
this point,
contracts,
in terms of funding, we get the max amount reimbursable by the state, which is in your letter. That's the 80% version. Our 20% match on top of that. We would basically go to construction. When we did the project, we were looking for an award later this month, probably about mid-month, if all goes well with the review of the DOT. Obviously, to enter into that contract and make that award, we need to have our share of money authorized or in place, for Latin American, based on, legal counsel wouldn't let him enter into that contract without having that supplemental appropriation or funding mechanism in place. So we're requesting that at this point, so that we can move forward with the construction project.
Any further discussion? Rex?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, thanks for bringing this up, and also thank you and the men for your work during the storm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Abstained? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're at council adjourned.
Fine. Oh, I tell you, I lost my voice for 2 days. I don't think it's still back. Whoa. Oh, that was awful.
I don't think I should do it. But I
The lady huskies.
Oh, my husband is crazy about the land.
Your son kinda good.
Sitting on the edge of his chair. Yes, he's screaming.
I don't know, I was gonna ask her, she's not interested, then you lose your friend. Used to be in retail.
She does, and she's a friend of
This is interesting. Paul, I'm quick, I tell you the tree issue, it's third grade. You can't. It's just like it's emotional.
Yeah, I would have said something.
They don't even listen to facts.
They were
From organic program? Yeah, he does both. Yeah.